Okay, so I don't know if we should be flattered or deeply depressed that you're actually able to be here with us today. But she's going right back.
Yes.
So you lead a life that is just, and not even just this week, I think for many of us in this room, a room full of relative Wonder Women is a ultra Wonder Woman life. You have been in Congress for 8 years. You have 3 kids, what seems like actually a very functional marriage to your longtime husband, Steve.
22 and a half.
Which is a job in itself, as we all know. And you're the chair of the Democratic National Committee. You have a book that came out yesterday, actually, called For the Next Generation, A Wake-Up Call to Solving Our Nation's Problems. And you are solving a big problem later today, apparently. So first, can you tell us a little bit about what's happening now at 250?
Yes. First of all, thank you. It is really incredible to be able to be among so many powerful and amazing women, each in your own right. We appear to be bringing this in for a landing now, and are hopefully less than a day away from reopening the government and raising the debts, increasing the debt ceiling so we can pay our nation's bills, and setting up a framework in which by mid-December, a bicameral budget conference committee would come back to Congress with a proposed method to pass an additional continuing resolution or establish a regular order for passing appropriations bills. And as an appropriator, I can tell you that all of the members of the Appropriations Committee very much on both sides of the aisle are interested in that. And then establishing by mid-February another increase in the debt ceiling and a path forward. So that bill, the compromise was announced by the Senate leadership. It'll start, however, in the House, because if we pass the bill out of the House first, then there's only one procedural motion available to the minority in the Senate that would have to be disposed of in order to get 60 votes. And that way, we'll speed this along a little bit quicker than if it happened in the Senate first.
So what's your optimism level on a scale of 1 to 10?
Because the Speaker has finally decided to attempt to get a majority vote of the whole House rather than employing what's known as the House dirt rule that the Republicans use, which is insisting that any legislation that comes to the floor has to have a majority of Republicans support it. I think we're with the majority of Democrats supporting it, probably almost all of us, and however many Republicans the Speaker can muster, we can get to 217.
And time frame-wise?
Time frame-wise, it depends how late the Senate wants to work.
You work all night. She told me a minute ago, fell asleep in her clothes, forgot to charge her devices, so couldn't set her alarm, had to be on TV at 6, but luckily the makeup was so good when she fell asleep
I slept
that
carefully.
she could just do a little Q-tip touch-up, and here she is.
Wish, wish.
Amazing.
I did shower.
So you can work all night, clearly, but the Senate may be.
Well, I think realistically it will be tomorrow. I don't think, we'll vote sometime tonight. The bill has to go to the Rules Committee, then we have to vote on the rule, then we'll have to vote on the bill, we'll have to have debate, and we'll send it to the Senate. And so I would expect, I can't imagine by the time we're done with that process that the Senate would do this until tomorrow.
So a little earlier, before you came back this afternoon, Olympia Snow was here,
Yes.
and she was talking about the reason she decided to leave the Senate after so many years, and a spirit of collaboration that was no longer there. And so I want to do a little role playing with you.
Okay.
So your youngest daughter, Shelby, is 10.
She is.
So I'm Shelby, and I say to you, Mom.
She has blonde hair too.
Oh, she does. Probably a little curlier than mine.
Yes.
If you're lucky enough to get your genes. Mom, so we learned in kindergarten how to work together and collaborate and work toward a common goal, rolling my eyes. Why can't you and all the grown-ups you work with do what we learned in kindergarten?
Well, Shelb, that's a good question. I think that, like I always tell you, it's really important, even though you might not agree with your friends, that you work really hard at trying to get along with them, to not always insist that things have to be your way, Sometimes you have to make sure that your friends also feel good about what you decide to play together, about where you're going to go, about whether or not you're going to watch TV or go outside and ride bikes. You know, and if you are always insisting that the activity you choose is done your way, then you're not going to be friends very long. And
And you grow up to be Olympia Snow and you leave the Senate.
yeah, or you're going to be playing alone. And so, you know, I hope that the grown-ups that I work with will take that same advice and understand that we have to make sure that we don't engage in my way or the highway politics. And I've made a personal effort, Shelby, to try to make sure that I do my part. Now, obviously, as the chair of the DNC, I mean, I'm a partisan. You know, I mean, I care deeply about my party's agenda. You know, I certainly couldn't have said yes to President Obama if I wasn't willing to, you know, run the ball, you know, down the field for us. But I've done my part because I think we need to be pragmatic and we have to work together. And so, for example, Dan Webster, who is a Republican member of the House, who was the Speaker of the Florida House when I was in the legislature, he and I couldn't be more polar opposites. But when he was elected in 2010, after Gabby Giffords was shot, and during President Obama's State of the Union, we had Republicans and Democrats invited a member of the opposite party to sit together at the State of the Union. He and I sat together. And during that evening, we hatched a plan to start a bipartisan dinner that would have no agenda other than getting to know each other and building trust. And so we each invited 4 members of our party to that first dinner. And then subsequent dinners, a previous attendee has to invite a member of the opposite party. And we're up to about 30 or 40 members now. Actually, the next dinner, we'll have to get a bigger room. And all we do is spend time during the evening getting to know each other, telling each other stories about, members always like to talk about their first election, how they got here. And, you know, when members like to talk about themselves, I think that's going to come as a shock. And that's built trust. And you end up looking at someone who you thought must have been an alien from another planet, and realize that they're not, that they have the same challenges that you do. Some of them ran for the right reasons, others maybe not so much, but you learn that you can look past your differences when you know someone personally and have heard their story. So
and do you think that that's something that women broker more easily? I mean,
oh, yes.
Can you talk a little bit about, I know you were here last night and you heard Susan Collins talking about, you know, the group that she put together in the Senate. Can you talk a little bit about that, about the personality differences or the work style differences?
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree with her more. It is absolutely the case, in my opinion, that not all women, but so many more women are willing to work together and find consensus. And when you're trying to figure it out and achieve a goal, or you are struggling with differing opinions, most of the time a woman is not interested in obliterating the woman on the other side of the table. That's not always the case when you're negotiating with men, or when men are trying to reach common ground. Common ground isn't necessarily always even the goal for a lot of men. And the more women that we get into leadership, the more women run, the more women in positions of power, we're going to be able to get more women in the room when those decisions are made. Because in the Senate, there's 20 women now, that's critical mass, and that's fantastic. The women in the House, we still, other than Nancy Pelosi, we still have a ways to go in terms of getting more women into those decision-making roles in the House of Representatives. We're at a record in the House, too, 81 women. The more women that we get into the pipeline of leadership, and the more of us, through all of our professional experiences, that make it a priority to reach behind us and pull another woman up on the rung of the ladder that you just left. When you move up to the one in front of you, then the better off we're all going to be, because we need that professional sisterhood. We have to be looking out for each other. Men look out for each other all the time. So we joke among the House members that if they just locked us in a room, if they locked all the women in a room for a few hours, we would have had this done ages ago.
Well, so I want to take questions from the audience in a minute, but before we do, I have one more question for you. When you think about everything you just said, and how it's your job and the job of women in this room to bring the women up on the rung beneath you. Yes. If you look at the spirit in politics right now, And you've been a public servant your entire adult life.
Yeah.
How do you encourage young women to follow in your path? How do you, and do you do a lot of that? And if you do, how do you do it?
Oh, I do a lot of that. So even when my staff tells me that I really don't have time to accept the latest speaking request that I get to young women or interns, or I always say yes. I say yes to every single request I get to speak to young women, large group, small group, because to me, it's important for them to see the path forward, what they can achieve, and to talk about our experiences and how we got where we are. So I tell young women that they need to grab every internship and experience that they can possibly get to give them the portfolio of experience that they need to succeed on the path that they choose in life. And where there isn't one that is naturally available, create it. So, for example, when I was in college and I knew I wanted to eventually run for office, and I went to the University of Florida, go Gators. But any Gators in the house?
There's like some
good,
chitter,
okay,
yeah.
got you. I really wanted to intern for an elected official, but there weren't any obvious ones. So I went down to the city commission, and I marched into the office, and I actually talked to the only city commissioner that was there, and of course she was a woman, and burning the midnight oil. And I offered myself. I said, I'm not sure if you have any intern programs, but I'd love to get some experience, and I know I can help you. And she gave me the opportunity right there on the spot. Eventually she ran for the Florida House, and she hired me to work on her campaign. And she was such an incredible role model. She didn't win that race, but I got some valuable political experience. And by the time I applied for the job that I got right out of graduate school that led to my having a mentor who I ultimately succeeded in the Florida legislature and in Congress, Peter Deutsch, I had so much experience for being 20 years old politically that my resume was the one he pulled out of the pack. And I sent out 180 resumes when I was looking for a job as a legislative aide because I knew I wanted to work for a legislator. And I got 90 to New York legislators, 90 to Florida legislators, because I know it's going to be surprising to you that I originally am from New York. And I got 5 responses, 3 interviews, and 1 job.
Wow.
And the 1 job I got was with the individual who I ultimately succeeded in the State House and in Congress.
And you turned out okay.
I did not too bad.
Now, who has a question? Oh, yep.
Hi, my name's Tara McKelvey, and I'm with the
Hey, Tara.
BBC.
Oh, great.
And I have a question. You talk about what it's like to work with men and also with Republicans on the Hill. So what do you think, what's next for John Boehner?
Oh, you'd have to ask a Republican that. I think John Boehner is likely to continue as Speaker. And, I think there are probably quite a few of his colleagues that would like that to change. But the mechanism that there is really not an obvious mechanism to easily remove the Speaker in the middle of a Congress. It would be very surprising to me if that occurred.
Yep.
Hi, Floridian from
Hi.
Miami.
Oh, great.
Oh, no. Can you hear?
No. She said she was something about University of Florida, and she's from Miami.
And healthcare.
And do you live in my district?
I live in St. Louis now.
Oh, okay.
So probably
All
not in your
politics is
district,
local.
right? Too far south. Healthcare, which I think has really been one of those marketed a little bit differently. What, if you could go back and change, would you have done to make sure that we all understood the healthcare, Affordable Health Care Act better and all of the benefits of it?
I get that question a lot. I think, given that President Obama inherited the largest set of problems at once of any president since FDR, he was drinking from arguably the biggest fire hose of any incoming president. So with needing to rescue the auto industry and the banks that were too big to fail, and not to make excuses, but there's no question that had we done more of a victory lap, so to speak. In other words, had we taken, after passing the Affordable Care Act and going through the process of passing it, there was a lot of communication by individual members of Congress. We had town hall meetings, we talked about it. I don't think we anticipated the depth of the organized extremist opposition to it, the gross hyperbole that took place, you know, the description that it was a government takeover of healthcare, which I can tell you plenty of people who wanted the government to take over healthcare wished it was that. But afterwards, we should have done a better job at articulating the benefits. And like I said, when you do by victory lap, I mean, we passed it. We should have taken an opportunity to really make it more clear how it was going to help people. And we've done that since then, and I think it's a lot more clear to people now. I mean, but you know, we also have to look a little deeper at the numbers of people who, quote, oppose the Affordable Care Act when it's referred to as a bill, you know, as a law in total, because 11% of the people who say they're opposed think it didn't go far enough. So, you know, we're really not in a situation, we're in a situation where a relatively smaller percentage than is being portrayed oppose it. You go in and you ask people if they think insurance companies should be able to go back to the days when they could drop people or deny them coverage. People say no. Should young adults not be able to stay on their parents' insurance until they're 26? Of course not. Should we go back to annual and lifetime caps where people face medical bankruptcy? Should a woman not be able to get access to wellness and prevention healthcare benefits so that she can keep herself healthy and catch you know, things like breast cancer and other life-threatening illnesses earlier and make the healthcare system less expensive? Of course she should. So that's really what this debt ceiling fight and the government shutdown and the Republicans and the Tea Party holding you know, the economy hostage and using the Affordable Care Act as ransom, what they were trying to do is take away the peace of mind that women like me will now have on January 1st, that we don't have to spend the rest of our lives waiting for the other shoe to drop. When, God forbid, we face a recurrence, and suddenly we could also be facing not only fighting for our life, but fighting for how we're going to actually make sure we get the care that we need. That's the peace of mind that the Republicans are trying to rob us of.
Okay, so
Sorry.
a bomb's going to come out of that time is up thing if we don't wrap up.
All right, I don't want that to go off.
But it's so wonderful that you could take time out
Thank you.
of what, you know, is probably in a top 10 nutty afternoon to be here with us.
This would be in the top 10.
And we have every confidence that you're going to go back and fix the whole thing.
Thank
so
you.
Thank you
The
very
women
much.
are. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh.